Hey there, vinyl community. I'm back from a rather long hiatus from videos. I just wanted to let you all know I'm not dead. I didn't die. I just got really busy, and when you get busy, things like this, hobbies like this, tend to take a back seat. But I've had a little time on my hands and visited some really cool record stores over the last 2 months, from when finals finished and all my gigs finished. So I just wanted to show you some of the cool stuff I picked up that I've been listening to over the holidays. I got to go to a lot of really cool record stores in the last month or so. I got to visit New York and see some great concerts, but I also got to visit one of my favorite record stores ever, Academy Records on 18th Street in Manhattan, and got to visit one of my favorite stores back home in Texas, End of an Ear. And I checked out a new record store too in Fort Worth when I was visiting my friend. Went to this place called Doc's Records, which is I was pretty impressed with what they had. So why don't I show you what I've been collecting recently? And I'm going to start with the rock because classical people tend to have a little more patience. So I've been buying mostly classical lately, but I did pick up quite a few rock records. So I want to show those first. A lot of classic stuff here. First, from End of an Ear, actually yesterday I picked up Blue Cheer's sophomore album, Outside Inside. This is an original U.S. pressing. This is an incredible look at like early heavy metal. Before Black Sabbath, there were Blue Cheer. And the drumming on this record, for being a record that came out in 1968, the drumming is some heavy metal drumming. They were doing some really interesting stuff. From Doc's Records in Fort Worth, Texas, I actually got Love's fourth album, For Sale, and they had this on the floor sealed. It's originally U.S. pressing, never been opened. I, of course, opened it because records are made to be listened to. It's really cool. It's not as good as Forever Changes, or even the record they put out before Forever Changes, which the name is escaping me, because they had a lineup change and a lot of things were different, but still, I like this album. It's still classic love to me, and I think this is one of the best bands of the '60s, at least one of the most underrated bands of the '60s. Here's a reissue of a record that I've wanted for a very long time on vinyl, and original pressings of it were just kind of unobtainium for a long time. This is Circus Survive, which is a band that I'm very much a huge fan of and have been for over a decade. This is their third album, Blue Sky Noise. This was their major label debut. This is a really interesting album because it's a new direction for the band, and it's more of a mainstream rock record where they were really doing some more alternative stuff beforehand. It's not my favorite Circus Survive record, but it was the one glaring hole in my Circus Survive collection. So I'm glad I could get that filled. Speaking of reissues here, we have a reissue by Speaker's Corner. This is Santana Caravanserai. I think that's how you pronounce the name of this record. I've never actually heard it said. I've only ever seen it written. But to me, that's how the name looks. This is a very interesting record when you think of the records Santana put out before this. This one's very different. It's a lot more, it's a lot more spacey. It's a lot more ambient. There's a lot more Latin influence on it rather than the kind of the jam rock stuff that was coming out in the earlier records. I mean, they were all Latin influenced, obviously, but to me, I hear a lot more traditional music on this than I do on Santana 3 or Abraxas or something like that. I like it. The sound is very good on this pressing. I don't like it as much. I don't like it as much as Santana 3. Santana 3 is I think my favorite Santana record, and then Abraxas, of course, is amazing. But that's just my opinion. Got some at Doc's Records. They had a lot of cool minty original U.S. pressings there, and I did get a couple that have been on my want list for a while. I'm a big Donovan fan, and I've been looking for a long time for a clean copy of the Gift from Flower to Garden box set, and I finally found one. It's the stereo version. It's not the original mono version. I know. For these records, the mono is a really nice thing to have, but I haven't listened to this yet, but I think it's going to sound pretty good. The records are mint. The box presentation is great. It comes with this little miniature booklet, and I really like the presentation of it. This is I think Donovan at his creative peak. And the two records on here, one of which is Where Your Love Like Heaven. You know, Where Your Love Like Heaven, I think, is one of my favorite songs of the 60s. I know it's not typical Donovan. It doesn't sound like a lot of his other music, but I love that song so much. And when I first heard that song, I just had to get into more Donovan. And so I started buying Donovan records and listening to more Donovan. And now I have, you know, a lot more of his material that I enjoy, especially Sunshine Superman. But to me, you know, Where Your Love Like Heaven, which is in this record, is you know, will always be the most special Donovan material to me. So it's cool that I finally got this. I have the Speaker's Corner reissue of Where Your Love Like Heaven, but of course that's only one of the two records. You know, this is how it was originally released. I think for the reissues, they've been splitting up the records. I also got the other Donovan record that I've been meaning to get. It's Brabajagal. I think that's how you say that. Yeah, this is probably for me the last classic Donovan record. I kind of don't really listen to his material after this, but this has some good stuff on it. Happiness Runs is a classic. Super Lungs My Supergirl is one of his better rock songs. So yeah, happy to get this. This is the original. I think it's the Yellow Label Epic. Yeah. And also from Docs, I got Vanilla Fudge, The Beat Goes On. This is their second album. And I gotta say, I bought this because I enjoyed their first album so much. Last year I got a original US pressing of their debut album. And it was easily one of the things I listened to the most in the first couple months that I had it. And so I picked this up just merely based on wanting to see what the band did after it. And I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. This kind of doesn't sound like much to me, and yeah, I'm gonna listen to it one more time, but I think I may sell this because to me this just isn't good. I don't really have any more in-depth reviewing to do. I just listened to it and I didn't like it. And I thought it was unfocused. It was trying to be kind of grandiose, but didn't really go anywhere. And that's a shame because Vanilla Fudge can clearly write good music and make good music, because I know a lot of their stuff is covers. But yeah, based on their first album, I thought this would be great, and it was just no. I also picked up Alice Cooper's Greatest Hits on Warner Brothers, original U.S. pressing. You know, I don't like enough Alice Cooper material to really go into buying his albums, and you know, the album that I really like, the debut album, is so hard to find in clean condition anyway that I thought, you know, getting the Greatest Hits is a good way to go. It has, you know, most of the songs that I'm familiar with on it, and I don't know, I've just never gotten into Alice Cooper's deep cuts, so the Greatest Hits are fine for me. It sounds pretty good. I listened to it last night, and I'm 18 sounded great, School's Out sounded great, No More Mr. Nice Guy. The movie Dazed and Confused really made me fall in love with No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's such a great song. Cool, let's move on. I think this was the last one I got from Docs. This is the MoFi pressing of Pictures at an Exhibition by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This was kind of the last Emerson, Lake and Palmer record that I was missing from my collection, so it was nice that I was able to pick it up in the MoFi pressing, which was the one I was looking for. So, yeah. Some other stuff in here. Most of this is from End of an Ear Records when I went there yesterday. This is the recent record from actually a band in Austin that has some members that I'm friends with. This is the band Mean Girls. They're like an emo-ish pop-punk band from Austin, Texas. Really great. I recommend checking them out. They've been one of the better Austin bands of the last couple of years. I found an original U.S. pressing of the third Patti Smith record, Easter. I had the Sony Legacy reissue of this, and I'm really excited to A/B these because this was not that expensive, and if I like it better, I'm going to get rid of the Sony Legacy copy. Picked up some metal too. This is Agalloch, Ashes Against the Grain. Agalloch I think they just broke up actually. So we're a Portland-based black metal, death metal shoegaze experimental band. Basically, they make ambient black metal. If you like Death Heaven, you'll probably like Agalloch, although their Agalloch are a little more conventional than Death Heaven, who get a little more post-rocky. Yeah, I've been listening to this band on and off for the last year or two, and really enjoy it. We have another local Austin band on here. We have the only full-length album from the band Swing Set, spelled with a P, Swing Set. Oh, I'm sorry, the glare is really bad in here. I'm going to start taking the records out of the sleeves. Swing Set, All Our False Starts. This is great, like, early 2010s emo. This is a good example of the kind of music that was starting to really blow up around that time, and I wish there were bands like this that were still kind of churning out music like this, because I thought it was a really exciting musical movement at a really exciting time. Unfortunately, the emo scene nowadays is kind of that, really cheesy pop punk variety. Bands like Mom Jeans and Modern Baseball bands that I tried to like originally and just could never really get into. Okay, last two rock records. Here we have the sophomore, also some would say debut album of Faith No More, Introduce Yourself. Wow, the glare is terrible. I'm going to do something about that. Introduce Yourself. This is the band before Mike Patton joined the band on vocals. So nothing interesting vocally, but I didn't have any Faith No More records in my collection, and I do like the band, and this was $10, so it's now in my collection. And it's also a promo copy. You can see that there. So, I look forward to getting into this, but I would rather get Angel Dust. I need to track down a good copy of that. And last but not least, I found this, I don't know how I found this in Docs, because it's kind of an obscure record, but this is the discography of the 90s screamo band Makara. This is a rather obscure record. I was kind of shocked to find it in a record store. This is really cool, noisy screamo from, I believe, the late 90s. It could have been early 2000s, but I'm pretty sure late 90s. And there's not even a lot of information about them online, but I just remember I had seen them, I had heard some clips of them one time before, and saw this in the used bin and recognized the name, and briefly listened to it on my phone and was like, wow, this kind of slays. So, Makara discography. All right, I'm gonna take care of the glare. All right, hopefully that's a little better. I'm sorry, I recorded like 20 minutes of video already with that awful glare, so hopefully it turns out okay in the editing process. So I'm going to show some records that I got specifically at Academy Records on 18th Street in New York. It's one of my favorite places in the world to buy classical music. They really know their stuff. They really buy good records there, and they price them to sell. It's cheaper than the internet, cheaper than internet pricing. And you can tell the people there are really passionate about classical music and good pressings of classical music. So I was able to find a lot of cool stuff there. I had to haul it all back in my backpack, but it was worth it. So first off, we have probably the best find I made that day. This is a very, very minty original pressing of Howard Hanson conducting his own Symphony No. 2 Romantic. This is a Mercury pressing with the original color back, which marks it as an original jacket, and then it is the earliest deep maroon label grooved. So this is a true original pressing, and this just really sounds incredible. Anytime I can get a really clean original Mercury pressing, I'm always shocked with how good the sonics are. Really, really nice. And some people don't like the Hanson Symphony 2 because it is a little bit cheesy, but I don't know, it has a place in my heart. It was what we would end every concert with. Almost every concert with the Interlochen, we would end with a section from Hanson Symphony No. 2, because Howard Hanson was fairly involved with Interlochen Arts Camp back in the day. And he was also clearly involved with the Eastman School of Music. He was the head of it, I think, for a very long time. And so, obviously, it's the Eastman Rochester Orchestra playing on this. This is a white dog, not a shaded dog, a white dog pressing of the Poulenc Concerto for Organ, Strings, and Timpani. and Stravinsky Jeu de Cartes. I mostly got this for the Poulenc organ concerto. So if you'll remember from my classical video, this is a second RCA pressing with the just plain white dog. It's not behind a shaded background. The white dogs still sound pretty good. They're not quite as good as the shaded dogs, but I'm rarely disappointed by a white dog pressing. I think they're pretty good for the money. You know, this was like $8, so pretty happy with that. Got a cool recording I wasn't very familiar with. This is Strauss Alpine Symphony conducted by Rudolf Kemp in the Staatsspiel Dresden. I just really like Alpine Symphony, and if it's a good record label like EMI, I will take a chance on the recording. And I like this recording. I don't like it as much as, the Los Angeles recording with Meta or, other really, really famous good Alpine Symphony recordings, but it's not bad. I enjoyed it. Here we have some music for small wind ensemble on Philips, with Dvorak, Wind Serenade, Gounod, Petite Symphony, etc., etc. Yeah, this is just cool as a wind player because I'll be playing most of these pieces. I think I'm playing the Dvorak in the spring, maybe. I don't know. I should go back and look at my assignments. But it's always nice to get wind music on vinyl because it wasn't recorded that much on large labels. Here we have a Deutsche Grammophon pressing of some Stravinsky chamber music. I mostly got it for the octet for winds, but it's just cool to get, the Boston Symphony recordings from the 70s and 80s, I think, are really of a high caliber and not particularly expensive. We got a EMI digital recording of Stravinsky Pulcinella with Neville Mariner. This is, I believe, the second recording of the Pulcinella suites Mariner recorded with Academy of St. Martin. So I have the first recording he did. I'm interested to see why he decided to record it a second time within the span of like a decade. So I'm a huge sucker for Debussy piano music, just solo piano Debussy, and so I got some preludes, the volume 2 of the preludes by Claudio Arrau on Philips. Likewise, on Deutsche Grammophon, I got book 1 and 2 of Images on solo piano. I think the guy's name is Michelangeli. I've heard him talked about before. Is a pretty well-known interpreter of Debussy piano music. So I figured I'd pick this up. I think I have one more of his Debussy records. I'm not sure which. Maybe his Preludes. I think I have one of his Preludes records. But this is Images and Children's Corner, which Children's Corner is a really nice one. Some more Debussy, also on Deutsche Grammophon, with the Boston Symphony Chamber Players. This record is quite beautiful. And then on Argo, which was a subsidiary of the Decca label, Argo pressing of Stravinsky's Symphony of Psalms with the Phillips Jones Ensemble. Symphony of Psalms has some really great wind parts in it. It's really more of a symphony for choir, and it's like almost double wind quintet, I think. So it's a very woodwind heavy piece. It's a lot of fun to play. I played it a couple years ago. This was a treat to find. This is not a particularly distinguished pressing in terms of sound quality. It's a none such digital, but this is Ronald Roseman playing the music of Francis Poulenc. The oboe sonata, the trio for oboe, bassoon, and piano, and then of course the wind sextet. This is all repertoire I love dearly. I've played every single one of these pieces, and Poulenc's one of my favorite composers, I think. And Ronald Roseman was an incredible oboist from the New York area. He actually taught two of my oboe teachers and many other oboists that I know. He taught at the Juilliard School for a while and SUNY Stony Brook, and he was just someone I've only ever heard people talk about in reverence of, and I listen to his playing and I really kind of understand what they're talking about. If you ever wanted to listen to a really good example of American oboe playing, I think Ronald Roseman is that good example. Moving on to some big orchestral music. Well, sort of big orchestral music. We have an EMI pressing of Shostakovich Concerto for Piano, Trumpet, and Strings with Christina Oritz on piano. I have a couple of her recordings. I do like her playing, and this is, of course, on EMI, which means it's going to sound pretty good, I think. It's usually the case with EMI recordings of Shostakovich, like this one. Symphony number 6 and, oh god, the glare. Symphony number 6 and Symphony number 11 with the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Berglund. Berglund did quite a few Shostakovich symphonies with the Bournemouth Symphony in England. And, I had never even heard of the Bournemouth Symphony. But apparently their Shostakovich recordings are quite impressive. And, I listened to this and it was very impressive. First of all, the sound was pretty incredible because, this is a well-known audiophile recording, I think. It's on the absolute sound list and, gets talked about a decent amount. But I found the interpretation also really satisfying. And here we have another EMI pressing of the Verdi Requiem with Giulini conducting the Philharmonia. It says, I think it says Angel Series, but it is a UK Angel, so I basically considered it an EMI. It's a brown label UK Angel pressed in England. They would often release records under this Angel label that are pressed in the UK for like box sets of things like choral works, operas, things like that. So the Verdi Requiem definitely qualifies as one of those. So that's what the label looks like. I think there's one label earlier than this for this record, because this was a rather high-selling record. I think they did a release with darker brown labels, but it sounds fine to me. More classical now. So that was all the stuff. That was the stack of records I walked out of Academy Records with on 18th Street, and the rest is just more classical that I've been buying. And I realize how much classical I've been buying lately just from looking at the stack and how much time I think I have left. We got a clear audio pressing of Sting's Songs from the Labyrinth. For those that don't know what this record is, this is Sting, like Sting from the Police, playing the music of 16th century British composer John Dowland, maybe 17th century, 16th century, 17th century. I want to say 16th century. John Dowland with a lutist, and Sting actually learned how to play the lute for this, so they do some duets. And it's interesting. It's not what I think anyone would call historically informed performance, but I don't think that's the point. I think the point was to get this like pop sensation and to have him get the general public interested in historical music. And I think he did a pretty good job of it. And, his voice is not totally unsuited for this kind of music. I find it actually a quite enjoyable listen, and it's kind of nice around Christmas time to put this on. Here we have a very good sounding record. I don't know why, but Shostakovich's 7th Symphony has never been one of the big symphonies for me that I always turn to. I don't know what it is, but when I was in New York a couple weeks ago, I did get to see the New York Phil play Shostakovich 7 with their new conductor, Jaap van Sweden. And I thought they sounded amazing. The new conductor, I think, is a really good thing for them. I think he's done really well with the orchestra. But also, it made me really kind of appreciate this symphony in a way that I never have before. I really enjoyed the performance so much so that I went out and bought another Berglund recording of Shostakovich's 7th Symphony. And this is also supposed to be a very, very famous recording for sound quality. I have yet to listen to it. I have a stack of records I need to listen to. But from what I hear, the sound quality is incredible and it's very clean, so I'm going to enjoy this. Maybe I'll listen to this tonight. This was a cool find. Actually, this was the one of the 2 classical records I got at Doc's Records in Fort Worth. This is a Japanese pressing of Japanese composers Torii Takemitsu, his piece November Steps. Torii Takemitsu is actually one of, I think, my favorite modernist composers, if that's a word we're still using. In terms of like post-tonal composers from the mid to late 20th century, people like Xenakis or Stockhausen or things like that are kind of going off in the avant-garde experimental. I think my favorite composer out of that chunk of composers is Toru Takemitsu. He's written some music that I really enjoy. Especially, I really enjoy the soundtrack he did to the Akira Kurosawa movie Ran. If you've never, I don't know if we have any movie buffs, film buffs in the audience, but Ran is kind of Akira Kurosawa's magnum opus of filmmaking. And Toru Takemitsu scored the entire film to Ran, did the entire soundtrack to the movie, and he did it based on the music of Mahler. It's Toru Takemitsu composing in the style of Mahler, which I thought was kind of bizarre, but it was beautiful, and it worked with the movie really, really well. What we got here? These are some like bargain picks I made, some bargain bin records that I don't think should be in the bargain bin, but I'm glad I found them in the bargain bin. We got Sibelius Symphony No. 4 with the Finnish Radio Symphony Orchestra on Decca. This is a narrow band, English Decca. We have Schumann Symphony No. 2 with Chicago Symphony Orchestra and Daniel Barenboim. I don't have a lot of Barenboim recordings with Chicago because he came to Chicago kind of rather late in the LP era and was there for most of the 80s and 90s. Actually, I don't know if he was appointed conductor at this time. This might have been before he was appointed the music director, because I know he was there up through the 90s. But yeah, anyway, I like Chicago Symphony, so I'll buy their records, and this was cheap. And Schumann Symphony No. 2 is, I think, my favorite Schumann symphony. Maybe it's because it has a nice oboe solo. This was really cool to find. This was the other classical record I got in Doc's Records. This is a London Decca box set of Ernst Ansermet conducting works of Igor Stravinsky. And what's cool about this box set is it has his famous ballets, The Rite of Spring, Petrushka, The Firebird. So it has his famous ballets. All of these recordings of Ansermet on these ballets, the individual records are actually quite rare in their original UK wideband format. I think The Rite of Spring regularly sells. Clean copies of The Rite of Spring alone sell for $50. Petrushka sells for more than that because that's a really famous one. I think a good clean wideband Petrushka would be around $80. Same with the Firebird. And this whole box set for me was $10, and it was sealed. It was, even though there's quite a bit of wear around the box set, it was sealed. So I knew the records had never been played, and it was $10. And I said, okay, for $10, I will take the chance of this not being, because it didn't say anywhere on it made in England. Sometimes on the boxes outside they say made in England. So I said, for $10, this is worth the gamble of it maybe being one of those US presses that I have to just get rid of. But I was hoping it would be an original UK press, and I was hoping it would be a wideband. Fortunately, my gamble was rewarded, because what I pulled out were absolutely mint wideband deep groove pressings of these recordings. Ooh, look at that. Yeah, made in England, wideband deep groove. These are going to sound really phenomenal once I get them cleaned up. I haven't even cleaned them yet. But I was happy I took a chance on this because it paid off. This is a record I was listening to yesterday. This is a very, very good recording of Shostakovich's String Quartet No. 10 and the Berg String Quartet No. 3 by the Weller Quartet on Decca, UK Decca, wideband. This recording's significant because, the glare is still kind of bad. This recording's significant because Shostakovich wrote String Quartet No. 10 for the Weller Quartet. They were I don't know if they were the ones that premiered it, but I do know that Shostakovich wrote the quartet with this group in mind. So it's cool that I have the recording by the group that the piece was intended for. And it sounds phenomenal. It's one of the better sounding Deccas I've heard. The string tone on it, the resonance is really something to kind of behold. Oh, there's a lot more classical records left. I need to talk faster. This is a reference recording, 45 RPM pressing of The Rite of Spring, conducted by Eugene Wu. I think that's how you say his name, Eugene Wee, and the Minnesota Orchestra. Recorded in the 90s. I listened to this and I have to say, I was a little disappointed. I did not like it. I mean, performance-wise, I think it's a good performance, but the way it's recorded is strange. And this is, I think, one of the second reference recording pressings I've been disappointed with, because to me, in sections where there really needed to be dynamics and like the power of the brass needed to come through, it didn't happen on this recording. But what I think they did is they must have put a mic like right in the percussion section, because every time there's a bass drum hit, it's like boom, like the room explodes. And that's nice and all, because it's nice to have, you know, big bass drum hits. But, you know, if the entire brass section in The Rite of Spring is playing full volume, it should sound kind of intense and loud. And on this recording, it doesn't. The only thing that's intense and loud on this recording to me are the bass drum hits, which I think is just kind of, So I don't know if I'll sell this or not. I may hang on to it for a while and maybe give it a second chance, but there are Rite of Spring recordings that I would turn to long before this, like the Schulte on Decca, or the Bernstein with the New York Phil. This is cool. This is a Speaker's Corner reissue of the Dvorak Cello Concerto, conducted by George Zell. It's cool to hear George Zell conduct an orchestra that's not the Cleveland Orchestra on a label that's not Columbia. You know, the Berlin Phil is an orchestra I'm a huge fan of, and I'm also a big fan of George Zell, especially when he has no involvement in the actual production of the recording, because he was notoriously bad about trying to be a record producer and a conductor at the same time. I haven't listened to this yet, but the Dvorak Cello Concerto is a great piece. I have a couple recordings of it already, and I just got this one out of curiosity because it was on sale. Here's some records by probably my favorite reissue label, Analog Productions. We have the Analog Productions Wilson reissue of Hyperion Night, playing excerpts from Stravinsky's Petrushka along with the Beethoven Sonata in C major, the Waldstein Sonata. I know my German pronunciation. Yeah, this sounds great, especially the Petrushka. And we have the two latest reissues in their RCA Living Stereo series. We have the Morton Gould conducting Billy the Kid by Copland. And the one I was really excited about, we have Charles Munch conducting the Boston Symphony in music by Dukas, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Saint-Saëns, The Spinning Wheel, and one of my all-time favorite pieces, Ravel's Mother Goose Suite. And, you know, Munch was a great interpreter of French music. For a while, when he was conductor of the Boston Symphony, they were the leading orchestra to play French music in the Western Hemisphere. And who doesn't love the music of Ravel? I mean, really. I don't think Ravel ever wrote a bad thing in his life, besides Bolero. But all his music is just a treat both to listen to and to play, although it's usually very difficult to play, to be honest. Speaking of difficult things to play, we have Gisa Anda playing the Bartók Piano Concerto No. 1 on Deutsche Grammophon with Frédéric Brisquet. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's been a while since I had to say names on video. This is a Speaker's Corner reissue. The Bartók Piano Concerto No. 1 is notoriously difficult. And it's played rather well here by Gisa Anda. And I enjoyed the performance. The recording's nothing special, but the performance is quite good. A record with very good performance and recording is this original EMI gold label pressing I have of the operetta by Puccini, Gianni Schicchi. I love this operetta, this one-act opera. I love this piece so much. I got to play it in the summer of 2016. I got to perform it, And just a couple weeks ago, I got to see it at the Metropolitan Opera with Placido Domingo singing the title role of Johnny Skiki. It's kind of interesting because Placido Domingo is a famous tenor. The role of Johnny Skiki is for baritone. Placido Domingo is 70 years old now. He's celebrated his 50 years since his debut at the Metropolitan Opera. And he's just kind of too old to sing tenor roles anymore. So he decided, I guess, or someone decided that he should sing a baritone role, and they slapped him onto Il Trittico that they were doing, which is 3 one-act Puccini operas that were written together and are meant to be performed together. Johnny Skiki is the last one on the list. The first 2 are tragedies. The last one, Johnny Skiki, is a comedy. And it was quite incredible. I'd never gotten to see Placido Domingo sing live, and I'm glad I did because he was quite amazing. Even though he was singing a baritone role, the performance was outstanding. The acting by the cast was great. The singing in every role was incredible. It was a very memorable performance, and of a piece that I already really like anyway. I think this piece is really fun. If you've never listened to it, it's a blast. Just make sure you actually read the libretto because it makes it funny. It's one of the funniest operas I think I've ever seen. Oh, and I should show the label on this because it is an original EMI label. It's pretty rare. It's the, I don't know why I said silver. It's the original white and gold EMI label. Kind of hard to find. Sounds very good. Very, very good. Okay, last 2 records. I know this has been a long update because I haven't done one in a long time, and I've bought some records between then and now. So Speaker's Corner has been reissuing some really great recordings in the Columbia catalog, which I'm really excited about because from what I've heard so far, the Speaker's Corner reissues sound significantly better than the original Columbia 6i pressings, at least that I've heard. There's a little give and take, but for the most part, I think they sound a lot better because I think the EQ is a little more natural. So I picked up 2 of the recent Columbia reissues they did. One is very special. This is Bruno Walter conducting Beethoven 5 with the New York Philharmonic. I think Bruno Walter is one of the most underrated conductors of all time. I know record collectors really know who Bruno Walter is, but I find in the classical world today, not a lot of people really remember him, especially classical musicians my age. He's not one of the big conductors that comes up. But I think his interpretation of, usually German music, I think his interpretation is outstanding, usually definitive. And the last one is a record that I'd had on the original Columbia 6i for a very long time. It was one of the first records I bought when I was collecting. And it had always been kind of beat up. It was a kind of a noisy pressing I had. And I really wanted a clean copy, and they finally reissued it. It's the Shostakovich Cello Concerto No. 1. Sorry about this glare, guys. Shostakovich Cello Concerto No. 1 and Symphony No. 1 with the Philadelphia Orchestra and Mislav Rostropovich playing the cello concerto. This is the first recording ever done of the Shostakovich Cello Concerto No. 1. I think both the performances on this disc are pretty definitive. The orchestra and the symphony just sounds great, and Rostropovich is, of course, a master of Shostakovich on the cello. So that was a pretty large stack of records I just kind of read off to you guys. So thanks for sitting tight with me. It was nice to do a video again and to get the channel going because the channel's been kind of growing without me. I haven't been around, and I've seen my subscriber count steadily increase, and I'm almost to 3,000 subscribers now. I'm starting to consider whether or not I should end up doing another contest. So let me know what you think about that. Let me know if I should attempt to do a contest one more time and see if it's not more successful. I've also toyed with the idea of doing some videos for people looking to get into record collecting and get into vinyl and audio and things like that. The classical record collecting video is fun to do. I'd like to do some that are centered more around beginners, because I have a lot of people, a lot of friends mostly, that will come to me and say, look, I want to start listening to vinyl. How do I do that? And it sometimes can be a little overwhelming if I have to do it over Facebook Messenger or Instagram or things like that. And I figure like some videos would be nice for people to be able to watch, and they can go back and replay them, and I can recommend some gear for people looking to get started. I can recommend, I can talk about, ways to handle vinyl, things like that. So I've been toying with that idea, and I think maybe in the coming weeks I will make a video or two kind of on those topics. But let me know what you think. Let me know what content you'd like to see me do on the channel in the future. Because I'd like to do more stuff than just record updates, and I feel like the videos that I do on more specific topics seem to get more attention and become more popular. I want to thank you guys for having the patience to stick with me on this channel, as I waited quite a long time to make another video. It means a lot that the channel is still growing and still active, even though I haven't made a video in almost half a year. So yeah, thank you guys, and I'm gonna try to get some more content out pretty soon and be a little more active than I have been recently. So cheers, everyone.